was great having Gur's glowing eyes. I forget what that was taken from her. There was an idea behind that whole thing with the glowing eyes in the darkness. I forget if it was Cylon Warriors from Battlestar Galactica. But this whole thing with the panels turning on, this is actually taken from an old Batman cartoon from the early 90s with, what's his name, Mudface or something like that? Clayface. He gets into a TV control room and there's a videotape on it. It has his face on all the monitors. This guy with the ink, that's great. The only thing is, I don't think squids have ink. I'm not certain, but I think only octopuses have ink, so I never looked it up, but I never even thought of it until the show was in the can. As soon as it hit the can, I was like, hey, wait a sec. Squids don't have ink, do they? It's such a pity, though. In the end, this guy basically dies, though. Off screen, but he's basically dead. You can see our lip sync there. It just sucks. Our lip sync on this show is just so far off sometimes. It was really embarrassing. I'll talk more about that later as I see it. Dib's Wonderful Life of Doom. This was a show that I thought was really well done. It was well paced. It was just a great written story. Here's an X-Files ripoff, basically. It was an X-Files story with something very similar. These germs or whatever would go inside people's eyeballs and then control them. So it was a Kyle Menke, Sean Murray show. An excellent team of board artists. And the writing for this episode was great as well. I mean, it was well paced. You started out slow. You ended up in the middle of a story that you had no idea where it was going, and you're actually rather surprised where it's going. And then it turns around in the end, and you realize that you've been surprised. Almost an old Twilight Zone story, Rod Serling sort of a story. So I really like that. Plus, it paced up. It just got more and more intense. Almost every scene just built on the scene before it, and it included just Dib and Zim still. But it also included all sorts of other people, the tallest and such. This is Sean's stuff. Sean would usually do the talky bits of their shows. Kyle would do the action sequences. So Kyle did most of the stuff in Dib's future towards the end, and Sean did most of this, the whole beginning and then the very end, the last scenes. And it's funny that it was such a petty idea. That's the great thing about Zim is Zim gets caught up in petty things. He never seems to do anything that's grandiose. He could be out, blowing up the White House or blowing off half of the Earth or, just doing something to actually conquer the Earth. But instead he's concerned about who threw a muffin at his head. Really good shots. These two guys put their boards in for an Emmy 2002. I can't believe they didn't win. Their boards were amazing. Supposedly people couldn't understand how to read them, and these are animation peers because there were too many levels, too many panning levels, and it was too divided up for layout purposes. It was such a shame. And if people can't read a board in an Emmy judging panel, they should be thrown off the panel pretty much. I didn't find out until later, though. The kids on the internet, at least, were saying this was a very confusing episode. They couldn't make the jump, which Jonah and I had always complained the kids aren't that stupid. They could make the jump. That at the end, they'll realize that Zim, somewhere in between those two scenes, from the school to this bedroom scene, had abducted Dib and, hypnotized him or put him through this alternate reality or this virtual reality. And amazingly, the kids on the internet couldn't understand it. Probably half of the kids or more were very confused. They hated this episode because they couldn't understand when Dib was abducted. And I think that's changed my whole perception about how kids, at least kids in America, react to writing that's not obvious. And it's really sad, actually. I had a little bit more hope for kids. And these are kids that are, 12 to 18. They're not young kids that are 6 years old. The meek Rob. I always thought that was a nod to Rob Hummel, who was very meek. I was always wondering how that came about. I never asked Jonah or looked into it. But the name Microb would rise up again in this series. There's always something going on with the Microb. Microb were always against the Urkins. The big question is, how would it be played out? Would the Microb be equally as bad as the Urkins, but the same sort of a conquering force on the other side of the galaxy? Notice Membrane's bare shin. Always had a problem with Membrane's legs. I guess Membrane was supposed to have black leotards on. I never knew that. There he has black leotards, so he missed that. But sometimes you'll catch a scene coming through where Membrane has no pants on. It really makes him look like some sort of a child molester. He's just a man in a trench coat with some very S&M goggles on. Originally, right there, he says, whatever this is, that's where we originally had all the pictures of Dib flying around. All those, they were in there. Whatever this is. And each word had a different picture. But we moved it over. It was also a really nice story to see what Dib would do. What would happen if Dib could deal with Zim properly? It's kind of fun to know that Dib actually would deal with the situation. Not like Zim, where Zim seems to not be able to deal with anything. It's just that Zim always has luck behind him, and he has technology behind him. A very nice joke with Gur blowing up. You always wonder, what would Gur do when he's done with the Earth, or when they're done with their mission? Would he just live happily ever after, or would he just blow up? I mean, what's his use? So yeah, it was a great touch, a great design effort. I believe it was John Fountain's design, or design sense, where as Dib gets older, his hair gets bigger, until it ends up, when he's very old, it's almost like a lightning bolt going through his head and coming out his chin with his little goatee. This scene originally had a lot more of people climbing over each other. It never played off quite that well. But it was great to see that Dib had these female assistants that were always with him through the years. He always had these sexy female assistants. There was a new one every year or so, or every era. This is a great sequence. All the light and the interplay needs a little bit more time. But, just very nice. So well done. Foreground, background elements, all the angles, the light and the play and the character acting. Just everything's great. Can't believe this didn't even get considered for an Emmy.